This is Christy Hartman. Welcome to this gel printing session. For this project, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a gel plate. This is a 5x7. I like to add an acrylic block to the back of my gel plate. You need a brayer. This is a 3.5-inch soft speedball brayer. I also use a Baren, and a Baren is used just basically to help your print adhere to your gel plate. You need some paper. Any kind of paper that you like to use for this project will work. This is actually a piece of scrapbooking paper. You also can use, which I've started using, some print paper. I have also already added my background line art using a Micron 05. You can use any size that you like. You will also need Posca marker, and this is the size PC1MR. You need some paint. We're only going to use 2 paint colors for this project. We're going to use green gold and we're going to use cobalt teal hue. We're also going to use some extender to lengthen the drying time and lengthen the working time. I'm also going to use a palette knife to mix up the extender in with my 2 paint colors. You will also need these leaf shapes, which I have cut out of old file folders that are plastic. You will also need a stencil. This stencil we're going to use for the background. So let's clear off our work area and let's get started. Let's start with our first paint color. We're going to use green gold. And I'm going to put a little bit more paint on here than I normally would. This is probably about the size, it's about the size of a nickel. I'm also going to add some extender to it because I want to lengthen the amount of my work time. This extender on the back, DecoArt tells you that this is a 1:4 ratio. Always check your extender before you begin working, because your extender will give you specific directions on the ratio. Don't use too much. It'll become really kind of gloppy. So 1:4. I'm going to use my finger. I could have used my palette knife. And I don't know if you can see that, but I have just covered my fingertip. And I'm going to just lay it on my plate. I'm going to mix this with my palette knife. Mix this very well. If you don't, it will end up leaving clear spots in your print. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't see any extender kind of hanging around. I'm going to take my brayer, and I like to just kind of start from the middle and then brayer my paint out onto my plate. And you'll see when you add this extender, it gets a little bit juicier. We're going to use these little hand cut masks that I've given you the line art for. And I just arrange them. And because I added that extender, I'm able to lengthen out my work time. Otherwise, if I had not added extender to this, I would have to work very, very quickly to get this ready to go. And I can overlap these if I want to. I have a little bit of an overlap. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my print. This is the print on the printing paper. Lay my paper down. I'm going to take my gel plate and I'm going to just line it up wherever I want. Now this is a 5x7. If you want to cover this entire area, you could use an 8x10. And I press gently. I don't press very hard. Flip it over. Rub with my fingers. Go over start with my Baren. And pull it off. And there's the first print. Now I'm going to, because I hate to waste this paint, I'm taking a clean piece of scrapbooking paper and I'm going to lay this over the top and I'm going to try and remove all of that paint. Okay, I got a little bit more. And I'll just save this and use it for another print. I'm going to use another piece of scrapbooking paper. I'm going to remove these stencils. And again, because I added that extender, I have a little bit longer working time. So I'm going to flip this over on top of my paper. I'm going to turn that over. Now, if you don't have a Baren, you could also just take your brayer and go over the top of this, and that'll work just fine. Okay, so that's going to be our print. I'm going to let this sit and dry. If I pull this too soon, I won't pull all that paint up off of my gel plate. I removed the print from my gel plate, and this is what you get. I have this one, which will leave the white shapes of my little leaf shapes. Again, we're going to use our 5x7 inch plate. We're going to use the cobalt teal hue. And I'm going to use about the same amount of paint. I'm going to add some extender, same amount, 1:4 ratio. And I again put it out on my fingertip. Grab my brayer using the same 3.5 inch brayer. You could use a 4 inch, you could use a 2 inch. And I brayer until I have a fairly smooth application of paint. You don't have to use this stencil. Any stencil that you have that you want to try to use will work just fine. And I'm going to grab a piece of deli paper. I'm going to lay this down because I want to remove just a little bit of that paint, and I'm gently going to rub my fingers over the top of my gel plate. Very gently. It's a whisper thin finger application. And pull it off because I want to leave some of that paint. That's about how much paint I removed. This print, and I'm just going to line it up as well as I can. There's lots of tools that can help you line up your gel prints out on the market. I don't personally have them, but and I removed some of that paint prior to printing because I didn't want a heavy application of turquoise on this print. And rub back over the top of it with my fingers. And I'm actually giving it some firm pressure. And I can peek underneath to see if I've removed most of my paint. And I have. And that's my print. I still have a little bit of paint surrounding my stencil. And I want to remove most of this. Pull my stencil off. I'm going to grab this print, lay it down. This time I'm going to line this up so that my gel printed areas line up as well as I can. You can see that's what my print's going to look like. Flip it over carefully, use my fingers and my Baren. And then this has to sit and dry completely before I can remove it. Okay, let's pull this off. It didn't pull off perfectly. There's quite a bit of glue left on the plate, but that's not bad. Not bad at all. I've outlined all of my pea pods in my background so far, and I did a few of them. This one, I went back over the top of the black that I gel printed over the top of, and it was actually super easy. Again, I used my black Posca pen. So these were 3 backgrounds that I had completed, and I just transferred the black line art right over the top of my gel print, and it also worked really well. The next step is to take just a paper mask. This is just a cutout piece of paper in the shape of our pea pod. I'm going to arrange it onto my paper, and I'm going to mask out the area where I want to paint my pea pod. Put a small amount of paint onto my sponge, and I'm going to gently, and I'm not pressing very hard, and I'm kind of moving my sponge all around my mask because I am adding a white layer to my background to kind of isolate the pea, and I'm just holding on to it. You could tape it down if you felt the need. And I can make this as light or as dark as I prefer. Now, let's try one more. Let's do this one. I think you can see that. It just almost makes a shadow around that pea pod.